The Disappearance of the Semite, how a linguistic identity was politicized, racialized, and lost.
A thousand voices lost in the sand, words carved in stone by a ghostly hand, echoes whisper through the desert's fate.
This part discusses how the early Zionist movement in Europe appropriated the term Semite to advance a nationalist Jewish identity while gradually excluding Arabs despite their Semitic heritage. It unpacks the ideological tensions between European Jewish settlers and the indigenous Palestinian population, both of whom could lay claim to Semitic roots. Part 3. The political rise of Zionism and the early 20th century tension in Palestine. The early 20th century marked a pivotal transformation in the political landscape of the Middle East, one that redefined Semitic identity through the competing nationalisms of Zionism and Arab resistance. At the heart of this transformation was a crisis of identity, belonging, and power that centered on the ancient land of Palestine, a crossroads of Semitic history, culture, and faith. Zionism emerged in late 19th century Europe as a political movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish homeland. While Jewish connection to the land of Israel had deep religious and historical roots, political Zionism was a product of modernity, specifically a reaction to the virulent anti-Semitism and nationalist ideologies sweeping through Europe. Figures like Theodor Herzl and Chaim Weizmann framed Zionism as both a refuge from persecution and a reclamation of national dignity. Yet in asserting this vision, Zionism also introduced a new and narrow interpretation of Semitic identity, one that placed European Jews at the center, while often ignoring, excluding, or dismissing the Semitic lineage of the Arab populations who already inhabited the land. Palestinian Arabs, who also trace their cultural and linguistic heritage to the broader Semitic world, found themselves caught in a narrative that increasingly marginalized their existential indigeneity. They were reimagined in colonial and Zionist discourse not as fellow Semites, but as obstacles to Jewish nationhood, a tragic inversion that racialized and politicized Semitic identity along binary lines: settler and native, chosen and forgotten, visible and invisible. British imperialism played a decisive role in inflaming this binary. The 1917 Balfour Declaration, which pledged support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, was issued without the consent of the Arab majority living there. The document, while vague in language, marked a decisive political moment. It treated Palestine not as a land shared by Semitic peoples, but as a canvas for European geopolitical designs. Under British Mandate rule, tensions escalated as waves of Jewish immigration, many fleeing fascism and genocide in Europe, intensified friction with the Arab population. What could have been a shared Semitic reclamation of dignity instead became a zero-sum contest for land, memory, and survival. The tragedy of this era lies not only in the violence it unleashed, but in the missed opportunity for solidarity. The racialization of the Jewish and Arab Semitic identities into opposing camps erased their shared linguistic, cultural, and historical roots. In place of Semitic kinship, a new order emerged, one in which power, territory, and Western validation dictated legitimacy. As Zionism transformed from a movement of aspiration into a state-building enterprise, it increasingly relied on Western narratives that positioned Jews as Western allies in a backward Eastern land. Meanwhile, Arabs, Palestinian or otherwise, were cast as uncivilized, irrational, or hostile. These racialized tropes were not simply colonial holdovers. They were essential to the geopolitical logic that justified the displacement of Arab populations and the silencing of their Semitic identity. By the mid-20th century, the political and racial categories hardened. Semite had come to mean Jew in dominant discourse, while Arabs, though linguistically and culturally Semitic, were relegated to an entirely different, an often oppositional category. This dismemberment of Semitic identity set the stage for the deeper erasures and misrepresentations that would follow in the post-1948 world.
A thousand voices lost in the sand, words carved in stone by a ghostly hand. Echoes whisper through the desert's face. Time hides the key to the sacred place. A scholar's quest